The rain poured like a waterfall, soaking the dark streets of the city. A tiny figure huddled under a broken awning, shivering in a torn jacket. Her name was Lily, a homeless girl no older than 10, with tangled hair and eyes that sparkled with hope despite her hunger. Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Please subscribe to my channel for more sweet videos like this. Let the story continue. She clutched a soggy piece of cardboard that read, "Please help." Cars zoomed by, splashing her with muddy water, but no one stopped. No one cared. A sleek black limousine screeched to a halt right in front of her. The door flew open, and out stepped a woman in a glittering dress, her face like something from a magazine. It was Victoria Harrington, the wife of billionaire Charles Harrington, one of the richest men in the world. Her diamond earrings sparkled even in the rain. Behind her stood her teenage daughter, Isabella, rolling her eyes and holding an umbrella. "Lily," Victoria said, her voice soft but firm, like she was used to getting what she wanted. "Come with us. We're taking you home." Lily's heart raced. Home? She didn't know these people. Why would they want her? Her stomach growled and her freezing fingers shook. She looked into Victoria's eyes, searching for a trick, but all she saw was warmth. Hesitating, she took a step forward. That's when it happened. As Lily reached for Victoria's hand, a loud crash echoed through the street. A delivery truck skidded out of control, its tires screaming against the wet pavement. It was heading straight for them. Lily froze, her eyes wide with terror. Victoria screamed, pulling Lily toward her, but the truck was too fast. Isabella dropped her umbrella, her face pale. Time seemed to slow as the massive vehicle barreled closer, its headlights blinding them. Would they survive? Or was this the end of Lily's new beginning? Let's go back to 3 days earlier, when Lily's life was just a cold, lonely blur. She lived in an alley behind a pizza shop, sleeping on a pile of cardboard boxes. Every morning, she'd wake up to the smell of fresh pizza, but all she had to eat were scraps from the dumpster. Her only friend was a stray cat she named Whiskers, who curled up next to her at night to keep her warm. Lily wasn't always homeless. She used to have a mom who sang her lullabies and a dad who made her pancakes shaped like hearts. But 2 years ago, a fire took everything her home, her parents, her happiness. Since then, she'd been on her own, moving from shelter to shelter until she ended up on the streets. She was tough, but deep down, she dreamed of a family who would love her again. On this particular morning, Lily was counting the coins she'd collected from kind strangers. $1.25. She whispered to Whiskers, who purred in response. "Maybe we can buy a hot chocolate today." Her stomach growled, but she smiled. She always tried to stay positive, even when things felt hopeless. Across town, in a mansion bigger than a castle, the Harrington family lived a very different life. Charles Harrington was a businessman who owned half the city's skyscrapers. His wife, Victoria, was famous for throwing fancy parties where movie stars and presidents showed up. Their daughter, Isabella, was 16 and had everything a girl could want: designer clothes, a private chef, even a pet peacock named Percy. But Isabella wasn't happy. She felt like her parents cared more about their money than about her. That morning, Victoria sat at the breakfast table, sipping coffee from a gold-rimmed cup. "Charles, we need to do something meaningful," she said, flipping through a magazine. "Everyone's talking about charity these days. We should adopt a child. It'll look good for the family name." Charles looked up from his phone, raising an eyebrow. "Adopt? Are you serious? We're too busy for that." "It's perfect," Victoria clapped her hands. "We'll find a sweet, photogenic kid, and the newspapers will love us. Plus, Isabella could use a sibling to keep her out of trouble." Isabella, who was scrolling on her phone, snorted. "A sibling? No way. I don't want some random kid messing up my life." But Victoria had made up her mind. She called her assistant and said, "Find me a child. Someone cute, but not too much trouble." That's how the search for Lily began. Back in the alley, Lily's day was about to change. She was sharing a crust of bread with Whiskers when a man in a fancy suit walked up. He looked out of place, like a peacock in a junkyard. "Are you Lily?" he asked, holding a clipboard. Lily nodded, her heart pounding. Was she in trouble? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My name's Mr. Thompson. I work for the Harrington family. They want to meet you. They're thinking of taking you in." Lily's jaw dropped. "Me? Why me?" Mr. Thompson shrugged. "They saw your picture in a charity newsletter. They think you're special." He handed her a shiny card with the Harrington family's name on it. "Come to this address tomorrow. Don't be late." Lily stared at the card, her hands shaking. A family? A real family? It sounded too good to be true. That night, she couldn't sleep. She hugged Whiskers and whispered, "What if they're nice? What if they love me?" But a tiny voice in her head warned her, "Be careful, Lily. Nothing this good comes without a catch." The next day, Lily walked to the address on the card. It was a skyscraper with glass walls that sparkled in the sun. She felt small and dirty in her ripped clothes, but she took a deep breath and stepped inside. A woman in a red dress, Victoria's assistant, told her to a fancy office where Victoria and Isabella waited. Victoria smiled like a movie star. "Oh, Lily, you're adorable. We're going to give you a new life. Won't that be wonderful?" Isabella crossed her arms, glaring at Lily. "She looks like she hasn't showered in a year. This is a terrible idea, Mom." Lily's cheeks burned, but she stood tall. "I'm not dirty. I'm just me." Victoria laughed, patting Lily's head. "You're perfect. Let's get you cleaned up and take you home." The next 2 days were a whirlwind. Lily was whisked away to the Harrington mansion, where maids gave her a bubble bath and dressed her in a frilly pink dress. She ate food she'd never heard of, like quinoa salad and truffle soup. The house was so big she got lost twice. Charles barely spoke to her, always on his phone, but Victoria kept taking pictures of her for social media. Hashtag New Beginnings, she said, posting a photo of Lily smiling awkwardly. Isabella was the worst. She ignored Lily or made mean comments. "Don't touch my stuff," she snapped when Lily admired her jewelry box. "You're not my sister." Lily tried to stay strong, but she missed Whiskers. She'd asked to bring him, but Victoria said, "No pets. They're messy." Lily hid her tears, not wanting to seem ungrateful. Still, she felt like a doll in a display case, not a real part of the family. On the third day, Victoria announced they were going shopping. "We need to show the world our new daughter," she said, clapping her hands. That's when they drove to the city center, and the rain started pouring. Victoria spotted Lily's old cardboard sign under the awning and insisted on stopping. "It'll make a great photo," she said. "The poor girl we saved." Lily didn't want to get out of the car. Standing by her old sign felt wrong, like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't, but Victoria was already out, waving her over. Isabella groaned but followed, holding her umbrella. That's when they reached the moment we started with the truck speeding toward them. The truck's horn blared, deafening. Lily's legs wouldn't move. Victoria yanked her arm, trying to pull her out of the way, but the truck was too close. Isabella screamed, "Mom, do something!" Rain blurred everything, and the headlights grew brighter, brighter. A loud bang echoed through the street. The truck swerved at the last second, smashing into a streetlight instead of them. The pole crashed to the ground, sparks flying. Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst. She was alive. They were all alive. But something was wrong. Victoria's face was pale, and she was clutching her chest. "Lily," she gasped, her voice weak. "Are you okay?" Before Lily could answer, Victoria's eyes fluttered shut, and she collapsed onto the wet pavement. Isabella dropped to her knees, screaming, "Mom! Mom! Wake up!" Lily stood frozen, rain mixing with her tears. What had just happened? Was Victoria hurt? Was it her fault? And why did she feel like this was only the beginning of something even worse? The rain kept falling, turning the street into a blurry mess of lights and screams. Lily stood frozen, her soaked dress clinging to her skin, as Isabella shook her mother's shoulders. "Mom, wake up!" Isabella's voice cracked, her usual snarky tone replaced by panic. Victoria lay still on the wet pavement, her glittering dress now muddy, her face pale as a ghost. Lily's heart thumped so loud she could barely hear the sirens in the distance. People were running toward them now, shouting, pulling out phones to take pictures. The crashed truck smoked nearby, its driver stumbling out, yelling apologies. But Lily couldn't focus on any of it. All she could see was Victoria, the woman who'd promised her a new life, lying there like she might never wake up. "Is she dead?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. She didn't know if she said it to Isabella or to herself. The thought made her stomach twist. She barely knew Victoria, but the idea of losing her felt like losing her own mom all over again. Isabella glared at her, tears streaming down her face. "Don't say that! This is your fault! If we hadn't stopped for your stupid sign, this wouldn't have happened!" Her words stung like a slap, but before Lily could respond, paramedics pushed through the crowd. "Move back," a paramedic shouted, kneeling beside Victoria. They checked her pulse, then quickly lifted her onto a stretcher. "She's breathing, but her heart rate's unstable. We need to get her to the hospital now." Isabella grabbed Lily's arm, her nails digging in. "You're coming with me. You don't get to run away from this." She dragged Lily toward the limousine, where their driver, a quiet man named Henry, was already opening the door. Lily's legs felt like jelly, but she climbed in, her mind spinning. Was Isabella right? Was this her fault? As the limousine sped toward the hospital, Lily stared out the window, the city lights blurring through her tears. She didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear. Her new life with the Harringtons was already falling apart. At the hospital, the waiting room smelled like bleach and worry. Lily sat on a hard plastic chair, her wet dress leaving a puddle on the floor. Isabella paced back and forth, her phone buzzing with messages she ignored. Charles Harrington arrived an hour later, his face stormy. He didn't even look at Lily, just barked at a nurse. "Where's my wife? I need answers." The nurse led Charles to a doctor, and Lily strained to hear their conversation. "Mrs. Harrington had a heart episode," the doctor said. "It might have been triggered by stress or shock from the accident. She's stable now, but we're running tests. She needs rest and no more surprises." Charles nodded, then turned to Isabella. "What happened out there? Why were you even in that part of town?" Isabella's eyes flicked to Lily, sharp as knives. "Ask her. Mom wanted to play hero and pick up this street kid. That's why we were there when the truck came." Lily shrank in her chair, wishing she could disappear. Charles finally looked at her, his gaze cold. "You're the girl Victoria brought home." It wasn't a question, just a statement, like he was sizing up a problem. "Stay out of the way. We've got enough to deal with." Lily nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to say she was sorry, that she didn't mean for any of this to happen, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she hugged herself, trying to stop shivering. The hospital was warm, but she felt colder than ever. Hours passed. Victoria was moved to a private room, and Charles and Isabella went to see her. Lily stayed in the waiting room, alone. A kind nurse brought her a blanket and a cup of hot cocoa, but even that couldn't chase away the knot in her stomach. She kept replaying the crash in her mind, the truck's headlights, Victoria's scream, the way she'd collapsed. What if Victoria never got better? What would happen to Lily then? Late that night, Isabella came back to the waiting room, her eyes red from crying. She sat across from Lily, not saying anything at first. The silence was heavy, like a storm about to break. Finally, Isabella spoke, her voice low. "She's awake. Mom's going to be okay, for now." Lily's shoulders sagged with relief. "I'm so glad," she whispered. I didn't mean." "Save it!" Isabella snapped, but her voice wasn't as sharp as before. She looked at Lily, really looked at her, for the first time. "Why did you even come with us? You don't belong in our world. You know that, right?" Lily swallowed hard. I just wanted a family, she said softly. I thought maybe you could be mine. Isabella laughed, but it wasn't mean, just tired. A family? We're not a family. We're a business. Mom only wanted you for the headlines. Billionaires save homeless girl. It's all a show. Lily's heart sank. She'd suspected Victoria's kindness had strings attached, but hearing it out loud hurt more than she expected. Still, she met Isabella's gaze. Maybe it started as a show, but I saw your mom's face when she pulled me out of the way. She was scared for me. That was real. Isabella opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, she looked like she might say something kind. But then her phone buzzed, and she stood up. Whatever. Just don't make things worse. She walked away, leaving Lily alone again. The next morning, Victoria was strong enough to see Lily. Charles wasn't happy about it, but Victoria insisted. When Lily walked into the hospital room, she barely recognized the glamorous woman from before. Victoria's makeup was gone, her hair flat, but her smile was still warm. "Lily, come here," she said, patting the bed. Lily hesitated, then sat beside her. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "I didn't mean for you to get hurt." Victoria shook her head. "It's not your fault, sweetheart. I'm just glad you're okay." She reached for Lily's hand, her grip weak but steady. "I meant what I said. We're going to give you a home. This doesn't change that." Lily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in days, she felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. But that hope didn't last long. A few days later, Victoria was released from the hospital, and the Harringtons brought Lily back to the mansion. Things seemed to settle down, but there was a strange tension in the air. Charles was gone most of the time, working late. Isabella avoided Lily, but sometimes Lily caught her staring, like she was trying to figure her out. And Victoria, though kind, was distracted, always whispering with her assistant about the plan. One night, Lily couldn't sleep. She tiptoed downstairs to get a glass of water, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. As she passed Charles's office, she heard voice low, urgent. She froze, pressing herself against the wall. "We can't keep this up," Charles was saying. "The press is eating up the adoption story, but it's too risky. What if she finds out?" "She won't," Victoria replied, her voice sharp. "She's just a kid. She trusts us." Lily's blood ran cold. Finds out what? Were they talking about her? Her heart pounded as she leaned closer, trying to hear more. "She's not just a kid," Charles said. "She's a liability. If anyone digs into her past, it could ruin everything. We should have picked someone else." Victoria sighed. "It's too late now. The papers are signed. She's ours. Besides, she's perfect for what we need." Lily's hands shook. What did they mean? What were they hiding? She wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. That's when she heard footsteps. Someone was coming toward the door. The office door creaked open, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. She ducked behind a tall vase, her heart racing so fast she thought it might explode. Charles stepped out, his phone to his ear, muttering something about cleaning up loose ends. He didn't see her, but he was so close she could smell his cologne. Then Victoria's voice called from inside. "Charles, wait. What if she's awake? We can't let her hear this." Charles stopped, turning back. "She's asleep. Stop worrying." But his voice was tense, like he wasn't sure. Lily held her breath, praying they wouldn't find her. Her mind raced with questions. What was the secret they were keeping? Why was she a liability? And what did they need her for? The vase wobbled slightly as she shifted, and a tiny clink echoed in the silent hall. Charles's head snapped toward the sound. "Who's there?" he barked, his voice like thunder. Lily's heart stopped. Had she been caught? Would they send her away or worse? The shadows seemed to close in around her, and the mansion suddenly felt like a trap. Lily's heart pounded like a drum as she crouched behind the vase, her breath stuck in her throat. The clink of the vase echoed in her ears, and Charles's sharp voice, "Who's there?" cut through the silence like a knife. The hallway was dark, but the light from his office spilled out, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for her. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying he wouldn't see her. Footsteps thudded closer. Lily could hear Charles's heavy breathing, the rustle of his suit as he moved. "Probably just that stupid peacock," he muttered, but he didn't sound convinced. She peeked through a tiny gap between the vase and the wall. Charles was standing just feet away, his eyes scanning the darkness. His face was hard, not like the distracted businessman she'd met, but like someone who had something to hide. "Charles, come back," Victoria called from the office, her voice tight. "You're being paranoid. It's nothing." Charles hesitated, then turned back toward the office, muttering under his breath. The door clicked shut behind him, and the hallway went quiet again. Lily let out a shaky breath, her legs trembling so hard she thought she might collapse. She waited, counting to 10 in her head, before creeping out from behind the vase. Every creak of the floor made her flinch, but she didn't stop until she was back in her room, the door locked behind her. She sank onto the bed, her mind racing. What had she just heard? Charles and Victoria were hiding. Something big. They'd called her a liability, said she could ruin everything. But what? And why did they need her? The questions swirled like a storm, and the more she thought, the more scared she felt. This wasn't the family she'd dreamed of. This was something else. Something dangerous. Lily hugged her knees, staring at the fancy room around her the silk curtains, the crystal lamp, the bed so big she felt lost in it. It was all fake, she realized. A pretty cage. She wanted to run, to find Whiskers and go back to her alley where things made sense. But she had nowhere to go, and the Harringtons had already signed papers to make her theirs. She was trapped. The next morning, Lily woke up with a plan. She couldn't just sit there, waiting for the Harrington secret to swallow her whole. She needed answers, and she needed help. The only person who might know something was Isabella. Sure, Isabella hated her. But she'd been there when Victoria collapsed, and she'd heard the whispers about the plan. Maybe, just maybe, she could be an ally. At breakfast, Lily sat across from Isabella, who was poking at her avocado toast with a scowl. Charles was gone, and Victoria was upstairs, resting. The dining room was quiet except for the clink of silverware and the distant squawk of Percy, the peacock, outside. Lily took a deep breath and leaned forward. "Isabella," she whispered, "can I ask you something?" Isabella didn't look up. "What do you want, street kid?" Lily ignored the jab. "Do you know what your parents are planning? Like, with me?" Isabella's fork froze midair. Her eyes flicked to Lily, sharp and suspicious. "What are you talking about?" "I heard them last night," Lily said, keeping her voice low. "In your dad's office, they said I'm a liability, that I could ruin everything, and they need me for something. Do you know what it is?" For a second, Isabella's tough girl mask slipped. Her face went pale, and her lips parted like she wanted to say something. But then she shook her head, her expression hardening. "You're imagining things. My parents are just stressed because of Mom's heart thing. Don't make up stories." "I'm not making it up," Lily said, louder than she meant to. A maid glanced over, and Lily lowered her voice. "I heard them, Isabella. They're hiding something. I thought you might know because you don't seem happy here either." Isabella stared at her, and for the first time, Lily saw something besides anger in her eyes, something like fear. "You don't know anything about me," Isabella said, but her voice was shaky. She pushed her plate away and stood up. "Just stay out of it, okay? You're not part of this family." But as Isabella walked away, she paused at the door, glancing back at Lily. "If you're smart, you'll keep your mouth shut," she said softly. "You don't know what they're capable of." Then she was gone, leaving Lily with more questions than ever. That afternoon, Lily decided to take a risk. If Isabella wouldn't help, she'd find answers herself. While Victoria was napping and Isabella was at a dance class, Lily snuck back to Charles's office. The door was locked, but she'd learned a trick from a kid at the shelter house to pick a simple lock with a paperclip. Her hands shook as she worked, but after a few tries, the lock clicked open. The office was huge, with a desk the size of a car and shelves full of books that looked like they'd never been touched. Papers were scattered everywhere, and a computer hummed softly. Lily's heart raced as she started searching. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she'd know it when she saw it. She opened drawers, finding boring stuff like pens and contracts. But then, in a locked filing cabinet, she used the paperclip again. She found a folder labeled Project Haven. Inside were documents with words she didn't fully understand. Public relations strategy, charity initiative, media campaign. But one page made her freeze. It was a photo of her, taken from the charity newsletter, with notes scribbled in red ink. Perfect candidate, tragic backstory, no living relatives, clean slate. Lily's stomach twisted. They'd chosen her because she had no one to ask questions if something happened to her. But why? She kept reading, her eyes scanning a memo that said, Project Haven will secure public support and divert attention from financial discrepancies. The adoption is key to the narrative. Financial discrepancies? What did that mean? Lily's head spun, but before she could read more, she heard a car pull into the driveway. Charles was back. Panic surged through her. She stuffed the folder back into the cabinet, her hands clumsy, and ran to the door. But as she slipped out, she didn't notice the single page that fell to the floor, half hidden under the desk. That night, Lily couldn't eat. The dining room felt like a trap, with Charles watching her over his wine glass and Victoria talking about a charity gala like nothing was wrong. Isabella was quiet, her eyes darting between her parents and Lily. After dinner, Lily followed Isabella to her room, desperate for answers. Go away, Isabella said, slamming her door. But Lily knocked, refusing to give up. Please, Lily said through the door. I found something. In your dad's office. It's called Project Haven, and it's about me. I'm scared, Isabella. I need your help. The door opened a crack, and Isabella's face appeared, her expression torn. You went in his office? Are you crazy? If he finds out. He won't, Lily said. But I need to know what's going on. I know you're not happy here. Maybe we can figure this out together. Isabella hesitated, then opened the door wider. Fine, but if you're lying, I'll make sure you're back on the streets by morning. She let Lily in, and for the first time, they sat together, not as enemies, but as two girls caught in something bigger than themselves. Lily told her about the folder, the photo, the strange words. Isabella listened, her face growing paler with every word. When Lily finished, Isabella was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know everything, but I've heard them talk about Project Haven before. It's not just about you. It's about money. A lot of money. And I think they're using you to cover something up. Cover what up? Lily asked, her heart sinking. Isabella shook her head. I don't know, but my dad's been acting weird for months, secret meetings, locked doors, and Mom's been obsessed with this adoption thing. I thought it was just for attention, but now I'm not sure. Lily felt a spark of hope. Isabella believed her. They weren't friends, but they were something else, now partners maybe. We can find out, Lily said. Together. Isabella nodded, but her eyes were scared. Okay, but we have to be careful. If they catch us. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. The next day, Lily and Isabella made a plan. They'd search the house for more clues, starting with Victoria's private study, where she kept her charity files. But as they crept toward the study, they heard voices, Charles, and a man they didn't recognize. The man's voice was deep, with an accent Lily couldn't place. They hid behind a curtain, listening. The auditors are getting close, the man said. If they trace the missing funds, you're done. The girl's story is holding them off for now, but it won't last. It'll last long enough, Charles snapped. Once Project Haven is complete, we'll be untouchable. The girl's the perfect distraction. Lily's blood ran cold. Missing funds? Auditors? And she was the distraction? She looked at Isabella, whose face was white with fear. They needed to get out of there, but before they could move, the study door flew open, and the strange man stepped out, his eyes locking onto the curtain. "Someone's here," he growled, his hand reaching into his jacket. Lily grabbed Isabella's arm, her heart racing. Were they about to be caught? And if they were, what would Charles and this dangerous stranger do to them? Lily's breath caught in her throat as the stranger's eyes bored into the curtain where she and Isabella hid. His hand was still inside his jacket, like he was reaching for something, a gun. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure he could hear it. Isabella's hand squeezed hers, trembling but firm, as they pressed themselves against the wall, praying the thick velvet curtain would hide them. "Who's there?" the man barked, his accent sharp and cold. His footsteps thudded closer, slow and deliberate, like a wolf stalking prey. Lily could see his shadow through the tiny gap in the curtain, growing larger with every step. Charles's voice came from the study, annoyed. "Victor, relax. It's probably just the maids. They're always snooping around." Victor didn't answer. He stopped just inches from the curtain, so close Lily could smell the sharp tang of his cologne. She held her breath, her legs shaking. If he pulled the curtain back, they were done. She didn't know who this man was, but his voice and the way he moved screamed danger. Then, a loud squawk broke the silence. Percy, the peacock, strutting through the hallway. Victor cursed under his breath and turned away, his footsteps retreating. "Stupid bird," he muttered. "This place is a circus." Charles laughed, but it sounded forced. "Let's finish this in my office. Too many ears around here." The study door clicked shut, and the hallway went quiet again. Lily let out a shaky breath, her knees weak. Isabella pulled her out from behind the curtain, her face pale but determined. "We need to move," she whispered. "Now." They tiptoed down the hall, their hearts still racing. Lily's mind spun with what they'd heard. Missing funds, auditors, her being a distraction. It was all connected. But how? And who was Victor? He wasn't like Charles's usual business friends, with their fancy suits and fake smiles. He felt dangerous, like someone who didn't care about rules. Back in Isabella's room, they locked the door and sat on the floor, whispering so no one could overhear. "Who was that guy?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. Isabella shook her head, her eyes wide. "I've never seen him before, but I've heard Dad mention a Victor. I thought he was just some investor. But after that, I don't know." "He's bad news." "What did they mean about missing funds?" Lily asked. "And why am I a distraction?" Isabella bit her lip, thinking, "Dad's company has been in the news lately. Something about money not adding up? I didn't pay attention because it's boring, but what if they're stealing money and using you to make people look the other way?" Lily's stomach twisted. It made sense, in a horrible way. The adoption, the photos, Victoria's obsession with #NewBeginnings. It was all a show to make the Harringtons look like heroes. But if they were caught, what would happen to her? Would they throw her away like trash? "We need proof," Lily said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Something we can use to protect ourselves." Isabella nodded, but her face was grim. "If we do this, there's no going back. My parents, they're not who you think they are. If they find out we're digging, they'll—" She stopped, swallowing hard. Lily reached for her hand. "I'm scared too. But we're in this together, right?" Isabella looked at her, and for the first time, there was no anger in her eyes, just trust. "Yeah," she said softly. "Together." The next day, Lily and Isabella put their plan into action. They needed to get into Victoria's study, where she kept her charity files. If Project Haven was a cover for something illegal, there had to be evidence there. But the study was locked, and Victoria was home, recovering from her hospital stay. They'd have to be sneaky. Isabella came up with a distraction. She told Victoria she wanted to plan a sister bonding day with Lily, something to sell the adoption story to the press. Victoria was thrilled, clapping her hands. "Oh, darling, that's perfect. I'll call the photographer. You girls go pick out outfits." While Victoria was busy on the phone, Lily and Isabella slipped into the study. The room was bright, with white walls and a desk covered in neat stacks of papers. A laptop sat open, its screen glowing. Isabella kept watch at the door while Lily searched the desk. Most of the papers were boring invitations to galas, donation receipts. But then Lily found a locked drawer. She pulled out her paperclip, her hand steady despite her nerves. The lock clicked open, and inside was a single USB drive labeled Haven Backup. Lily's heart raced. "Isabella, look at this," she whispered, holding up the drive. Isabella hurried over, her eyes wide. "That's it. It has to be. Plug it in." Lily hesitated. "What if it's password protected?" "We'll figure it out," Isabella said. "Hurry, before Mom comes looking." Lily plugged the USB into the laptop. A folder popped up, but it was locked with a password prompt. She tried Haven, then Project Haven, but nothing worked. Isabella groaned. "Try my dad's birthday. 3,250,000, 1,970. Lily typed it in, and the folder opened. Inside were dozens of file spreadsheets, emails, bank records. Lily clicked on one labeled Transfers. It showed millions of dollars moving to accounts in places she'd never heard of, like the Cayman Islands. Another file had an email from Charles to Victor. "The adoption is working. Media's distracted. Move the funds before the audit." Lily's blood ran cold. This was it proof the Harringtons were stealing money and using her to cover it up. She copied the files to the laptop's desktop, her hands shaking. "We've got it," she whispered. "We can show someone. The police, maybe?" But before Isabella could answer, the door handle rattled. "Girls?" Victoria's voice called, sharp and suspicious. "What are you doing in there?" Lily yanked the USB out, and Isabella slammed the laptop shut. They dove under the desk. Just as the door swung open, Victoria's heels clicked on the floor, slow and deliberate. "I know you're in here," she said, her voice no longer warm. "Come out, now." Lily's heart stopped. They were trapped, with the evidence right above them. If Victoria found the files, they were done. Isabella squeezed Lily's hand, her eyes darting around for an escape. The desk was big, but it wouldn't hide them for long. Victoria's footsteps stopped, and Lily could see her shadow through the gap under the desk. "Isabella, this isn't funny," Victoria said, her voice icy. "I heard you in here." Lily's mind raced. They needed a distraction, something to get Victoria out of the room. Then she remembered Percy. The peacock was always causing chaos. She reached into her pocket, found a marble she'd kept from the alley, and tossed it toward the window. It hit the glass with a loud clink. Victoria spun toward the sound. What was that? She hurried to the window, muttering about that wretched bird. Isabella seized the chance, pulling Lily out from under the desk. They bolted for the door, slipping into the hallway just as Victoria turned back. "Girls!" Victoria shouted, but they were already running, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. They didn't stop until they were in Isabella's room, the door locked behind them. Lily clutched the USB drive, her chest heaving. "That was too close," Isabella gasped. "She knows something's up." "We have the proof," Lily said, holding up the drive. "We can use it to stop them." Isabella shook her head, her face pale. "It's not that simple. My dad, he's connected to powerful people. If we go to the police, they might not believe us. Or worse, Victor might come after us." Lily's stomach twisted. She hadn't thought about that. Victor's cold eyes flashed in her mind, and she shivered. "What do we do then?" Isabella took a deep breath. "We need someone we can trust, someone outside the family. My old nanny, Miss Clara, she's the only one who ever cared about me. She might help." Lily nodded, hope flickering again. "Okay, let's find her." The next morning, Isabella called Miss Clara, using a burner phone she'd hidden from her parents. Miss Clara agreed to meet them at a coffee shop across town, far from the mansion. Lily and Isabella snuck out during Victoria's physical therapy session, taking a bus to avoid being tracked. The city felt different now, like every shadow hid a threat. At the coffee shop, Miss Clara was waiting a kind woman with gray hair and warm eyes. She hugged Isabella, then smiled at Lily. "You must be the new sister. Tell me everything." They spilled the whole story: the adoption, the crash, the secrets, the USB drive. Miss Clara listened, her face growing grim. When they finished, she nodded. "You're brave girls, but you're in danger. I know a lawyer who can help. Give me the drive and I'll make sure it gets to him." Lily hesitated, her instincts screaming to hold on to the evidence. But Isabella trusted Miss Clara, and they had no one else. She handed over the USB, her fingers lingering on it. "Please," she said, "don't let them hurt us." Miss Clara squeezed her hand. "I won't. Go home and act normal. I'll call you when it's safe." But as they left the coffee shop, Lily couldn't shake a bad feeling. She glanced back and saw Miss Clara on her phone, her expression hard. Was she calling the lawyer or someone else? That night, the mansion was quiet, but Lily couldn't sleep. She kept checking her phone, waiting for Miss Clara's call. Isabella was nervous too, pacing her room. "She'll come through," Isabella said, but she didn't sound sure. Then, at midnight, a loud bang echoed downstairs. Lily froze, her heart racing. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, heavy and fast. Someone was in the house. Isabella grabbed her arm, her eyes wide with fear. "They know," she whispered. "They know we took the drive." The door rattled as someone tried the handle. A deep voice Victor's growled, "Open the door, girls. We need to talk." Lily's blood ran cold. Had Miss Clara betrayed them? Were they out of time? The lock wouldn't hold for long, and Victor's shadow loomed under the door, waiting to pounce. The door shook as Victor pounded on it, his voice low and menacing. "Open it, girls, or I'll break it down." Lily's heart hammered in her chest, her hands trembling as she clutched Isabella's arm. The room felt like it was closing in, the shadows of the mansion turning into a cage. The lock rattled, barely holding against Victor's strength. Isabella's face was pale, her eyes darting around. "We can't let him in," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He'll hurt us." Lily's mind raced. They were trapped, with no way out. The window was too high to jump, and the hallway was blocked. But she'd survived worse on the streets. She wasn't giving up now. "The closet!" she hissed, pulling Isabella toward it. "Hide!" They scrambled into the walk-in closet, shoving themselves behind a rack of Isabella's designer clothes. The space was cramped, smelling of perfume and leather, but it was their only chance. Lily pulled the door shut just as the bedroom door splintered with a loud crack. Victor was inside. His heavy footsteps thudded across the floor, stopping near the bed. "I know you're here," he growled. "You can't run forever." Something crushed a lamp, maybe, and Lily bit her lip to keep from gasping. Isabella was trembling, her breath fast and shallow. Then another voice cut through the tension Charles's. "Victor, enough!" he snapped, his tone sharp but nervous. "You're making a mess. They're just kids." "Kids who stole evidence," Victor spat. "They gave it to that nanny. If she talks, we're finished." Lily's stomach dropped. Miss Clara. Had she betrayed them? Or was she in danger too? Her heart sank as she realized they'd trusted the wrong person. The USB drive, their only proof, was gone, and now Victor was here to make sure they couldn't tell anyone. Charles sighed, his voice closer now. "They won't talk. We'll handle it. Just don't do anything stupid." Victor laughed, cold and cruel. "Too late for that, Harrington. You should have picked a different girl. This one's too smart for her own good." Lily's blood ran cold. They were talking about her. She wasn't just a distraction, she was a threat. But why? What made her so dangerous? Her mind flashed to the folder in Charles's office, the note about her tragic backstory and no living relatives. There was something they weren't saying, something about her past. The footsteps moved away and the room went quiet. Lily waited, counting to 30 in her head, before whispering, "We need to get out of here. Now." Isabella nodded, her eyes wide with fear but determined. "There's a back staircase. It leads to the garage. We can take one of Dad's cars." They crept out of the closet, stepping over the shattered lamp. The bedroom door hung off its hinges, and the hallway was dark. Lily's heart pounded as they tiptoed toward the staircase, every creak of the floor making her flinch. They were almost there when a light flicked on, blinding them. Victoria stood at the top of the stairs, her face pale but her eyes hard. "Where do you think you're going?" she asked, her voice like ice. Lily froze, her throat tight. Victoria's silk robe flowed around her, but she didn't look like the kind woman from the hospital. She looked like someone who'd do anything to protect her secrets. "Mom, please," Isabella said, stepping in front of Lily. "Let us go. We know what you and Dad are doing. We won't tell, I swear." Victoria's lips tightened. "You don't understand, Isabella. This is bigger than you. Bigger than all of us. If you run, you'll make it worse." "Worse than what?" Lily burst out, her fear turning to anger. "You used me. You took me in to hide your lies, and now you're letting that man hurt us." Victoria's eyes softened for a moment, like she wanted to say something kind. But then her expression hardened again. "You were never supposed to get hurt, Lily. You were supposed to be our chance to start over. But you couldn't leave well enough alone." Lily's heart twisted. Start over? What did that mean? Before she could ask, Isabella grabbed her hand and yanked her toward the stairs. "Run!" she shouted. They bolted down the back staircase, Victoria's voice echoing behind them. "Stop them!" she yelled, and heavy footsteps followed Victor, Charles, maybe others. Lily's legs burned as they raced through the mansion, past glittering chandeliers and marble floors, into the garage. Isabella hit a button on the wall, and a sleek black sports car's lights flashed. "Get in!" she said, jumping into the driver's seat. Lily scrambled into the passenger side, her hands shaking as she buckled up. Isabella was only 16, she didn't even have a license, but there was no time to argue. The garage door was still opening when Isabella floored the gas. The car screeched forward, scraping the rising door with a horrible grinding sound. Behind them, Victor burst into the garage, his face twisted with rage. He raised something a gun and... Lily screamed. "Duck!" Isabella yelled, swerving as a loud bang echoed. The back window shattered, glass spraying everywhere. Lily curled into a ball, her heart racing. They were out of the garage now, speeding down the mansion's long driveway, the city lights blurring past. "Is he following us?" Lily gasped, peeking over the seat. Isabella glanced in the rearview mirror. "Not yet, but he will. We need to get to the police." Lily nodded, but her mind was spinning. The police might not believe them without the USB drive. And what if Victor got to them first? She clutched the seat, her knuckles white, as Isabella weaved through traffic, the car's engine roaring. They drove to a police station across town, parking in a dark alley to avoid being spotted. Inside, the station was busy, with officers shouting and phones ringing. Lily and Isabella approached a desk sergeant, a tired-looking woman with gray hair. "We need help," Isabella said, her voice shaking but firm. "My parents are stealing money, and they're trying to hurt us." The sergeant raised an eyebrow. "Slow down, kid. That's a big accusation. You got proof?" Lily's heart sank. The USB drive was gone, and their story sounded crazy: a homeless girl and a billionaire's daughter running from a mysterious gunman. But before she could speak, the sergeant's radio crackled, and a voice came through. "All units, be on the lookout for 2 juveniles, female, possibly in a stolen vehicle. Suspects in a domestic dispute at the Harrington residence." Lily's blood ran cold. Charles had already called the police, spinning the story to make them look like the criminals. The sergeant's eyes narrowed. "That you two?" "No," Lily cried. "They're lying. They're the ones who..." Before she could finish, the station's doors burst open, and Charles walked in, flanked by 2 officers. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold as ice. "There you are," he said, his voice smooth. "Thank you, officers. My daughter and her friend ran away after an argument. We'll take it from here." Isabella grabbed Lily's arm. "He's lying. He's going to hurt us." The sergeant hesitated, looking between Charles and the girls. But Charles was a powerful man, and his charm was convincing. "They're just upset," he said, smiling. "Teenagers, you know. Come on, girls, let's go home." Lily's heart pounded. If they went with him, they'd never escape. She looked at Isabella, who nodded slightly, like she had a plan. Okay, Isabella said, her voice fake, calm. We'll go. But as they followed Charles toward the door, Isabella whispered, When I say run, run. Outside, Charles led them to his limousine, where Victor waited, leaning against the car. His gun was hidden, but his smirk said everything. Lily's stomach twisted. This was it, the end. Now, Isabella shouted, shoving Lily toward an alley. They sprinted, dodging between buildings, as Charles and Victor shouted behind them. Lily's lungs burned, but she didn't stop, not even when she heard the screech of tires. They hid behind a dumpster, catching their breath. What now? Lily gasped. They'll find us. Isabella's eyes were fierce. We go public. The news, social media, anything. If everyone knows, they can't touch us. Lily nodded, but before they could move, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Miss Clara. Her face was grim, and she held the USB drive in her hand. I'm sorry, girls, she said, her voice heavy. I tried to protect you. Lily's heart leaped. You didn't betray us. Miss Clara shook her head. I gave a copy to my lawyer, but Charles's people got to him. They threatened my family. I had to play along. Isabella's eyes narrowed. Then why are you here? To make this right, Miss Clara said. She handed them the USB drive. Take it to the press. There's a reporter at Channel 5 who'll listen. Her name's Sarah Lane. Go now before they find you. Lily clutched the drive, hope surging. But as they turned to leave, headlights flooded the alley. Victor's car screeched to a stop, blocking their path. He stepped out, gun in hand, his smile cruel. Lily's heart stopped. There was nowhere to run, no way out. Victor's gun gleamed in the dim light, and his eyes were empty, like he'd done this before. Isabella stepped in front of Lily, her voice steady despite her fear. You don't have to do this, she said. Let us go, and we won't tell. Victor laughed. You think I trust you? You're just like your father, full of promises you can't keep? Lily's mind raced, searching for a way out. Then she saw a fire escape ladder just above them. If they could distract Victor, they might make it. She squeezed Isabella's hand, hoping she'd understand. Miss Clara, Lily said loudly, tell him the truth. Tell him you destroyed the drive. Victor's eyes flicked to Miss Clara, and in that split second, Lily yanked Isabella toward the ladder. They scrambled up, the metal creaking under their weight. Victor shouted, firing a shot that pinged off the ladder, missing them by inches. Keep going, Isabella yelled, pulling Lily higher. Below, Victor cursed, climbing after them. Miss Clara shouted something, but Lily couldn't hear over the blood pounding in her ears. They reached the roof, panting, and ran to the edge. The city sprawled below, a maze of lights and danger. There was another building close by, a short jump away. We can make it, Lily said, her voice fierce. Isabella nodded, and they leaped, landing hard on the other roof. Victor was still climbing, but they had a head start. They found a door, broke it open, and ran down a stairwell, spilling into a crowded street. People stared, but Lily didn't care. They were alive. They found a phone booth and called Sarah Lane, the reporter. Within hours, the USB drive's contents were on the newsbank records, emails, proof of Charles's embezzlement. The police arrested him and Victoria, and Victor disappeared, a wanted man. But the victory was bittersweet. Lily and Isabella were safe, but the Harrington family was gone. Isabella's parents faced years in prison, and the mansion was seized. Lily was sent to a foster home, a kind one this time, with a woman who reminded her of her mom. Isabella stayed with Miss Clara, trying to rebuild her life. One day, Lily got a letter from Isabella. You were right, it said. We were a family, even if it was just for a moment. Thank you for saving me. A photo was tucked inside Lily and Isabella on the mansion steps, smiling before everything fell apart. Lily held the photo, tears in her eyes. She'd wanted a family, and she'd found one, even if it broke her heart. She whispered to Whiskers, who'd been rescued from the alley, "We'll be okay." And for the first time, She believed it.